senior analyst and co-founder of Black in Data. Black in Data is a network of data professionals of color. We provide a platform for people of color to come and discuss anything data related and topics that deeply affect our communities. We provide a mentoring program. We have a training course. There is also a jobs board, and we also do a community outreach program. The mentoring program that we have is called a mentee-led program. It's a 3-month program where the mentee takes charge of their own mentoring journey. So the mentee may choose to focus on soft skills, for example, or they want to discuss things around data progression within the data space, or they may just need advice on technical skills that they need to accelerate within the data career. We also have a training program. Our training program is with our partner, Code Untapped, where we provide candidates into a 6 to 8 weeks training. Then the candidates are placed into a work placement with an organization where they'll work for a duration of 9 to 12 months. And usually after that, they get a permanent role within that organization. We have a fantastic jobs board where organizations that are actively looking to increase their diversity of thought of mind within the data space, they come directly to us and we act as a go-between for them to provide them with candidates. We also are starting a community outreach program in the autumn where we are going to colleges within the London area. So we're targeting kids from the ages of 16 to 18 and providing them with workshops, a little taster of what it's like to work within the data space. So they will get a first-hand experience with data extraction, data manipulation, data visualization, and being able to present their findings back to us just like they would in a real working environment. We are also working closely with a number of universities with particular Afro-Caribbean societies and different societies of color to tell people within that university about the different roles that exist within data, to increase visibility about the roles in data, and to also encourage young people to start thinking about how they can become data professionals. The main reason is the fact that there is so much to be learned and gained within the data space. That's why we are focusing our efforts, particularly for the young people, to start coming into these spaces. It is dynamic, it's creative, it is fun, and there's so much growth that you can have, an impact that you can have within organizations that you join as a data expert. We talk about artificial intelligence, we're talking about data science and the machine learning algorithms that you can create, the natural language processing that you'll be able to do, little chatbots, for example. All of these are part of the amazing things that you can do when you're in the data space. We are also really passionate about increasing the diversity within data because of the current biases that we know exist within the models that are being created right now. We have to have more people of color to be able to check their employers when they're creating algorithms that are inherently biased. For example, algorithms that are not able to recognize darker skin tones, algorithms that are not able to detect cancers from people of darker skin tones. These are all the issues that we currently face within the data space, where increasing the diversity when you're manipulating your data, creating your training and testing data sets, if you have a more diverse team, whether it's increasing gender or ethnicity, you will end up with better results than the companies currently do right now, which will enable these algorithms to understand the variations that exist, algorithms that are used to provide loans to certain people and decline loans to other people, creating a more balanced society by increasing diversity. So in terms of our distribution within the data space, Black people in particular only make up 3% of all data professionals within the UK. So overall, you do have a variation if you start to split down the different ethnic groups, for example, people of Asian descents do tend to make up a larger proportion of the people of color within the data. But when you bring it down to Black or people of Chinese origin, the distribution gets significantly lower. In terms of accessibility, there does seem to be a lack of representation, particularly in the data space, which doesn't reflect what's currently going on at the university level. So when we take it back into university and the type of courses that people of color are doing at university, we do have a large representation within the STEM subjects. So roughly around 16% are people of color in STEM. But then that doesn't get trickled down into the data spaces. Why is that? Some of the reasons is just because of the lack of visibility of people of color in data, which is again one of the reasons why Black in Data is doing what we are doing. We are putting ourselves at the very forefront of all of this to say to people that look like us, that are out there, hey, data spaces are fantastic, the roles are great, data science, artificial intelligence. You can make a fantastic career out of this. If it's not something that you've considered, then maybe you should start to consider it now. We tend to maybe focus, people that come out of STEM subjects, they tend to move into the more conventional, traditional routes of maybe medicine or law or engineering, just because these are the subjects that are known to their parents, for example, or within their community. So data is very much a new thing, and we just want to increase that visibility, that awareness, so that people are aware that it is here. It's a fantastic job to be in, and it is a space where we can thrive as people of color. I don't believe there's any stigma attached to data roles. I do solely believe the reason why there isn't a lot of people of color, or particularly Black people, in the data space is because of that visibility part and because of that awareness. When we go to the interview stages, the CV stages, the panel interviews, 9 times out of 10, there's nobody else there that looks like us. So at the very beginning, you are confronted, or you find yourself in a situation where you are automatically the other, where you stand out, where you really don't quite see yourself being represented in the organization that you are applying for. So already that acts as a barrier in terms of you getting a role into data. But we are doing a lot of work around that, discussing things with organizations, how they can improve their hiring techniques, how they are improving their panel interviews, for example, and the different ways that they can go about attracting a more diverse talent, because currently whatever it is that they're doing is just not reaching our communities. So we cannot talk about breaking down barriers without addressing the lack of progression that happens within organizations. So we see proportionally a lot of people that are coming through data roles tend to come through at the very junior level. You might get a few more in that middle management level, but once you then climb up the ladder to the CEO or the C-suites or the chief data officers, we are more or less non-existent. So organizations, if they are very serious and are committed to improving accessibility and progression for people of color, they need to start investing in training people so that they can accelerate to senior leadership levels. The more people of color that you have at those levels, the more benefits that you will see as an organization, because you will have people in those decision-making tables that will tell you clearly what the needs are for the people of color group in particular. So if you diversify, if you're thinking more about adding women to your board, adding more people of color to your board, adding people of different faiths to your board, it is only going to enrich and enhance that experience that people have within the organization. It will increase retention rates, for example. So definitely increasing progression, allowing people to naturally evolve, feel valued, okay, that is a key important factor in what we're doing. More and more people stay in organizations, they're not happy with what they're doing, and then they'll just end up leaving. But the moment that they are seen, they are visible, they are empowered, and they feel valued, they will outperform at their job, they will stay at their jobs longer, and overall it will benefit the entire organization and probably generate you a lot more revenue because of that fantastic ideas and thoughts that they bring into the table. In terms of how people can get a role in data, there are multiple stages that you're going to have to go through. The first is sending out your CV. If you're lucky, you'll then get a telephone interview. If you're lucky, you'll then get a first stage and a second stage interview, and then boom, you're in the role. So you must first of all pass that hurdle of the CV stage. And we know 9 times out of 10, an ethnic sounding name finds themselves in the dustbin of the CV heap. That's just because of the unconscious biases that exist within the recruitment stage entirely. So a lot of companies are currently trying to address that by having blind CVs, for example, to sort of remove that bias that actually exists. So for me personally, I don't feel like I have faced the CV discrimination now in my career, only because of my extensive experience that I have within my CV. So what I have gone through over the many years within the data and prior to joining the data industry is sufficient enough to get me through to the first and second stage interviews. But this impacts more junior people of color, so the people that are currently coming out of university, or maybe they're in the first to second years of their data career. Remain true to yourself. I know there is a temptation there for people to want to change their names to make it sound a little bit more European. I do not support that whatsoever. I think if any organization wants to hire you, they should hire all of you, including your name, your identity, your culture, your tradition, your background, because that is you as a person, and that's what they want to see. I feel like in terms of making changes around that, training needs to be had. People within the recruitment industry need to actually diversify that. So recruitment agencies themselves need to do a lot of work. They need to have a lot of self-reflection, because the majority of them are white. I don't really come across too many people of color recruitment agents. Hardly ever do I come across Black women as recruitment agents. So those agencies out there really do need to put in the work themselves to diversify that area at the very least, in order to start addressing this unconscious bias that exists. I mean, that's not just the main hurdle. So that's the first point of call. If you do progress from that CV stage, then you move on to the telephone interviewing stage. The telephone interview in itself brings in another hurdle, because now you start to address the accent variation that exists. So when we think about accents, so you would, first of all, might think about, regional accents from Birmingham, London, all of that. But it goes far deeper than that. We see variations within our community, for example, from the African community, from the Caribbean community, from the Indian communities. People that have a strong sounding accent, they get discriminated against heavily just by the way that they sound. Not because of their ability to do the work. They may be fantastic at what they do, but because they sound differently, they may not be able to come through the door. That's the second hurdle. The third is, if you have passed the CV, you've passed the telephone, you might get called in for a panel interview, for example. And now usually, again, this panel will consist of predominantly white men sitting at a table, throwing fantastic questions at you. This is usually fine if you're lucky, but because people naturally feel at ease with other people that look like them, so for a Black woman of color, or a Black woman like myself of Muslim faith, that already is a massive, I guess, blocker between us. I will not have much in common with, I guess, the average white male that is interviewing me because of my origin, my background, and my personal beliefs. So again, it comes down to luck. If you're lucky that you found an organization that is welcoming and that are really interested in what you bring as a technical, as a qualified data person, then you'll get through the door. But if the company isn't mature enough in terms of their diversity and inclusion or their experiences with people of color, you probably might struggle in those spaces. But it's not all lost. I think wanting to join a company that isn't aware of the, I guess, of differences that exist between cultural groups may not necessarily be a good thing for you. I think protecting our mental health is also very, very important. I don't advise getting into an organization where you are constantly the one that is fighting the good fight, trying to get them to diversify, trying to get them to understand what your needs are. You can, if you're able to do that, but you always have to put yourself as number one, protecting yourself, your own interests. The first thing that I would love to see is, I guess, when I start looking into the company's websites, that's the first representation of the company that I get. As soon as I click on that website, it is clear, abundantly clear, that it is lacking in diversity. So we need to think about how companies are portraying themselves from the very beginning. I'm not saying they should go and hire people just for the sake of, looking pretty on a website, but they need to start thinking about how they position themselves in terms of their websites, their brochures, their YouTube channels. They really have to own their own diversity and inclusion pieces, bring in authentic voices, allowing people within their organizations to come to the forefront to explain to them what's missing within that organization so that they can work together and improve that particular situation. I would say in the last 5 years, things are slowly progressing in terms of the visibility and the engagement pieces that organizations are doing. People are now more open to hearing about the struggles that people of color face in the workplace. Before that, I feel a lot of companies were just quite happy to pay lip service and then, okay, listen to your little bit of grievance and then just dust it under the carpet. People are a little bit more open now in terms of attending workshops that their companies may be running, whether it's diversity, inclusion, unconscious bias courses, or just general discussions around how to make people feel welcome in the workplace. So there's a lot more proactive steps that are being taken. It is a very, very slow progress, but nonetheless, it is definitely progress in the right direction. My main advice for people of color when looking for a career in data is to do your research. Really take the time to think about what exactly it is that you as an individual are looking for. Are you looking for just any job just to pay the bills? Or are you passionate about something? The beautiful thing about data is that it's not industry specific. Every single industry that you can think of out there has a data department or is thinking about a data department. So from retail to fashion, sports, media, like where I work currently, finance, banking, everything that exists out there requires data. So think about which sectors make you happy, right? Where is it that you find your happy space? And then start narrowing it down. Once you narrow the sector that you want to work in, you then need to think about the skill sets that are required to start a career in data. So I know a lot of people that have come from banking industry, for example, I've then retrained into data. So retraining, you have to be very careful. There are many organizations out there that run training programs for people. Some of them are great, some of them are not. Again, do your research. Word of mouth is really, really important. Reach out to different people within the data space and ask them about the different training programs that currently exist out there. Self-training is also fantastic. So the softwares that we use are open source. You can just go online and just start training yourself. YouTube, Google are my best friends. I don't think any data professional out there exists that doesn't Google how to do X, Y, Z. So make that your go-to space. Start following YouTube tutorials for SQL, for example, Udemy courses. There are many, many, many different tutors that are out there that are doing tutorials for free on YouTube that can help you. The main problem there is once you get stuck, you may not be able to have that one-on-one contact with a YouTuber, for example. So that's where the classroom sessions come in really, really handy, but they do cost quite a little bit of money. So hone in your SQL. I think that is the raw ingredient that you will need. If you want to progress into a data science role, you definitely do need to get a better grips on statistics and different statistical models. You would probably need to advance yourself in terms of the software that you use. So learning Python, understanding Python or R if you like. And the last thing that is really, really important in getting into data is being able to tell a story with data. So not just extracting, manipulating the data set and presenting it back into a PowerPoint presentation. You need to be able to tell us clearly what your findings are saying. What does it mean for the organization? How are they going to be increasing their revenue based on the analysis that you have performed? Data visualizations are fantastic. Being able to create dynamic dashboards so that your stakeholders can self-serve. So these are the main ingredients that you'll need to become a data analyst or data scientist, but there are many roles that exist within the data space that don't require you to do any coding. For example, data governance. This is an important part of data world that doesn't require you to have any SQL skills if you don't wish to, but it does require you to have great stakeholder management, being able to understand what the data sets are doing, how to cleanse those data sets, and just simplifying that communication between the stakeholders and the data team as well. So doing thorough research, talk to as many people within the data space as possible, network on LinkedIn. There are many, many people out there that are willing to share their expertise and their knowledge. That would be my main advice. I think my very first advice is apply anyway. We don't need to tick every single box in that requirement within the job spec. Making sure that you are technically good, yes, knowing your technical skills, getting your SQL, Python, data viz, being able to tell stories with data, essential component for every single data role that is existing out there. So you really do need to hone in your skill, your talent, but be confident, just apply and then see how it goes. Be truthful, be honest in terms of your capabilities. If you know what your weaknesses are, be truthful about it. The best companies that I have worked for are those companies that have said to me, okay, Sadiqah, what do you need? What's your weakness? And they have helped me become better as an analyst because we have sat down together, highlighted what my needs are in terms of my skills and my ability, and they've supported me to become better. So definitely be truthful about that, and also being clear about what your own expectations are, what you'd like to get out of that role, thinking about the types of organizations that you're applying into. Do your research. Don't just click, apply. Be selective, because you are going to be spending the majority of your time with these people that you're working with. So make sure it's the right company, the right people, the right culture. People talk about a culture fit. It's never going to fit. I don't think about culture fit. Think about culture add. You are bringing more to the table. You're helping them in terms of their knowledge about you as an individual, your background, your culture, your identity. So you're 100% adding to what is currently there, and that is only a plus. In terms of what you can do as a person of color in the data space to help with championing diversity is to actually start talking to your heads of. So whether it's your chief data officer, or if you have an existing diversity and inclusion head, those are the people that you need to start talking with first and foremost. But what I found has been so powerful is talking to my colleagues. So starting from the bottom up rather than the top down. You get more done from the top down, but I found the most impact we've had the most impact from the bottom up. So creating your own diversity and inclusion group, if one doesn't exist within your organization, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to sit there and create training programs for people, or sending off to unconscious bias or anti-racism training. But this could just be a space for people to feel comfortable enough to come and talk about the struggles that they're facing within the organization. Being open, allowing other people from the department to come in to hear about what you're currently doing. Bake sales, I found, have been fantastic. We run a series of talks, not necessarily specifically about being Black, but about the wonderful work that we're doing within the community, how it's impacting young people, reading, for example, at the local primary schools that are predominantly ethnic minority communities, helping supporting those communities in that way is really, really good. But be mindful of how much you are doing or taking on as an individual. It's really important to also share the burden with whoever else is interested. It can be extremely taxing. So do remember to look after yourself and do it because you want to do it, because it is a thankless task. No one's going to pat you on the shoulder and say well done, but at least you know within yourself that you're making an impact on your community, and you are supporting your colleagues to understand. Because a lot of the struggles that I have found is not because people are directly racist or inherently racist, but it comes down to a lot of ignorance. So people are not really aware of what it is to be a Black woman, for example, and they do feel uncomfortable to have discussions about my headscarf. Oh, why do you wear a headscarf? I'm more than happy to explain to you why I wear a headscarf, but I find people find that sort of discussion a little bit challenging. So now I do start the topic myself. Hi, I'm Sadiqah, and this is me. If you want to find out more about me, we can have a little discussion, being open about it. But it does take a lot of time and it does take a lot of effort, but it's definitely something worth doing.